Is Marco Missaglia, and I'm here just to present the important person that who is giving the seminar today, Edoardo Manfredini. The seminar is organized by the Master Program in Cooperation and Development offered by the University of Pavia. And it is maybe interesting to know that Edoardo is a former student of this master program long ago, more or less 20 years ago, if I'm not wrong. He attended this master program and then had a wonderful career. Now, Edoardo Manfredini is working with the European Union, and in particular, he's in charge of dealing with let's say in very general terms, foreign policy issues, and in particular, the management of crisis, of the unfortunately several crises around the world. And Edoardo today will illustrate the European Union policies to face with and to deal with this crisis, and the European Union instruments to put in place to implement those policies, which is exactly the kind of job Edoardo is currently doing. He moves a lot, putting apart the pandemic period, and nowadays he's planning to move to Burkina Faso, but he stayed in several places around the world. So he's really a very experienced person, and I want to thank him very, very much for being here. This is not the first seminar he's given in the framework of the Master Program in Cooperation and Development, and believe me, the seminar will be interesting for various reasons, not only for the topic in itself, which is a very important topic, crisis, the management of crisis around the world, but also because Edoardo is very good at telling young people, students, several interesting things, among others, to signal the career opportunities within the European Union. He's a very nice person, not only a very good professional. So try to take profit of Edoardo being here with us today. So once again, Edoardo, thank you so much for being here. Feel free to ask questions. I know the topic in itself will induce all of us to ask questions, comments, and so on and so forth. Don't be shy, feel free, okay? So thank you to all of you for being here attending the seminar. And above all, thank you, Edoardo, for having accepted this invitation. Thank you. Sorry. I forgot one important thing, and I beg your pardon, your pardon, Edoardo. So I was telling you that Edoardo attended, I think, the 4th edition of this master program, more or less 20 years ago. Now we achieved an important outcome, since the call is still open for the 25th edition of this master program. It's a very important achievement, and the call is open till the end of June. So for those of you who are interested, do not hesitate. There is time, okay, to try to be part of this project. And honestly, I think that the duration, 25 years, is a lot for any master program. I think the duration of this program is a signal of quality. So remember that the call is open until the end of June. Thank you very much again, Edoardo, and the floor is to you.
Thank you very much, Marco. Marco was one of the best teachers I had 20 years ago. It is a pleasure meeting him now again. So my name is Edoardo Manfredini. I am an official of the European Union. I work for the Service for Foreign Policy Instrument, which is a service of the European Commission who supports us through financial means the external action of the European Union, so the foreign policy of the European Union. I'm very pleased to be here. I like to call you colleagues. It's a pity that I don't see you in person. I'm a very social person. I am very honored to be here as well. I had great memories of the master, and this is an opportunity for me to give back the opportunity that I had 20 years ago somehow. And I hope that this conversation that we are having today, would inspire you a bit, would provide you some elements for food for thought, and would lead you for a path of career that is most suitable for you. Before starting, I have a couple or three disclaimers. The first one, I got my vaccination yesterday, my AstraZeneca jab yesterday. Today I feel broken and with a big headache. So therefore, apologies if I will have some, lows in the energy during our conversation. I will do my best, but this is what it is. Second disclaimer is that I'm not a professor. I'm not a teacher. I'm a practitioner. Don't expect big things. Just everything that I will tell you comes from my studies, because I keep on studying, but mostly from my experience. The third disclaimer is which is the third disclaimer? The third disclaimer, yes, is that I will not be fully, I cannot be comprehensive. We will have 2 hours. Normally this conversation could cover 8-10 hours. I call this presentation as an introduction to the integrated approach to conflicts and crisis. I'd like to give you a bit of, just feeling of the complexity of the world in which we are working, the complexity of the response that the European Union is providing, the difficulties that we have, but also the big opportunities. And before we start, I will share immediately the screen, and we go. Hope everything is fine. Okay. Why I'm choosing this particular topic? Marco Misaglia said already, I have 20 years of experience in conflict, crisis, and in working fragile context. So I'm talking about something that I know rather well. And secondly, because I would like to bring you a bit of European Union. I like, European Union remains for many, unfortunately, kind of planet very far away in the outer space, something that we know a bit, but we do not know much. And it's a pity. I believe very much in the European project. So for me, it's like also a duty to speak about the European Union, also because I think that if we do not work in the future together, we'll become irrelevant, and therefore we have an important objective. Therefore, I would like to take you to the outer space with me. Grab your spacesuit. If you are in your pajama, which I believe many of you have still, keep it, and we go. I'll try to stop in between of the section, trying to summarize. Maybe we'll get some questions, and then I'll move forward. Okay. I see some of you, and let's start. So, what we'll cover today, I want to give you context. I want to give you a context. I want to explain a bit this fractured world that we are working in, and some of the causes of the instability which is characterizing this particular era and the time we are living in. Then I'm entering into the European Union domain. I wanted to speak about the institutions which are working on external action, on the foreign policy, and then we'll dig a bit deeper and we'll go into the crisis response as such. And then I like to make the case study of Central African Republic to see how the theory that I've explained in the second point has been applied to this particular case, which kind of showcase and case study of the use of the integrated approach, which we will talk about later. I'll try to conclude with some thinking, points of discussion that will be probably for future, future studies, conversation later on. I will conclude with one slide on practical links if you are interested to have more information about the European Union and so on and so forth. So, glimpse at the world. So we are in a situation in which this world is changing and it's not clear how the setting of the new world of the international relation will be. We are at the end of the Cold War, where the UN system is in crisis, the UN Security Council is not working particularly. And I've chosen this particular quote from Antonio Gramsci and his Prism notebook, in which is perfectly picture the time we are living in. Crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interregnum, a great variety of morbid symptoms appears. He didn't, of course, mean that COVID would come, but the morbid symptoms are the ones of the instability. So the global instability becomes the new normal. We are living in that for a number of causes. The first, there is a strong return to geopolitics. This is a new era of great powers competition due to a leadership vacuum, okay, mainly of the US. The world is becoming multipolar, with the new actors entering into the arena, but less multilateral. And here we are experiencing frictions and tensions among these new actors. Which are the new actors? Of course, China, as also India, Turkey, Gulf states, and so on and so forth. We have climate change. Climate change is a reality. Climate change amplifies the risk of breakdowns in peacefulness by acting, as we call it, as a threat multiplier. There are already studies that say it's not a direct cause of conflicts, but it's a threat multiplier. And of course, while climate change doesn't automatically lead to higher levels of violence, climate pressure adversely impacts resource availability, affect population dynamic like migration and movement, and strain societal institutions, which of course affect socioeconomic and political stability. We still have migration. There are still consistent trends. Of course, it's very clear we have millions of migrants. They're entering new places, new countries, providing instability and providing tensions with local communities. Not only that, this causes also a rise of the populism. We have democracy in crisis. There is a decline in quality of the democracy, and there is also external pressure. Decline in the 5 main attributes of democracy, which are representation by governments. We are less and less government represented. We have more and more the rise of strong leaders which are trying to push as much as possible their constitutional mandates, trying to have more and more mandates, especially in Africa. We have less and less checks on government. COVID is impacting also the space for civil society to provide this check and balance. We have less and less participatory engagement. And of course, there is a continued aggression to minorities everywhere in the world. Let's think about the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar and so on and so forth. And this issue of democracy is not featuring only in the developing world, it's featuring also in the Western world. See the United States, for example. We have a big rise of inequalities. This was a trend before COVID. COVID is amplifying this, and we will see the results probably in few years' time We are just starting seeing these results. The refugees, IDPs are on the rise. IDPs are the internal displaced people who are moving in within regions or countries. We have 79.5 million of forcibly displaced people worldwide. There are 26 million refugees in the world and 45.7 internal displaced people. And you have to imagine that 85% of the refugees are hosted in developing countries. And you imagine the pressure on already fragile institutions, already fragile governance settings made by these refugees. I don't know if you are aware, but I mean, just the country who has the biggest number is Turkey, but then there are in the list of the first 5, there is Pakistan, Uganda, which is already suffering for bad governance and fragile institutions. We have a transnational organized crime on the rise. So the crime is becoming transnational, meaning that it's covering different states, normally linked to radical groups. This creates a lot of issue because normally governments are not able to control areas of the state, giving them opportunity to this organized crime to control huge and vast areas of countries. And of course, with a big risk for civil society and local population to be trapped in a conflict, which normally is very violent and doesn't have any end. Oh, sorry. And we have conflict in the rise. The conflict nature has changed and is making everything more complex. We are moving from a conflict that is intra-states, so between 2 states, and we are moving to interstates. So a number of armed groups are confronting within states. We have a proliferation of warring parties. So it's much more difficult to make peace when you have a number of stakeholders involved in these processes, for example. And we have warfare made by proxies. We have militias paid and supported by big powers confronting in places which are far away. And therefore we have a rise of civil wars that creates, of course, instability and crisis. So this is the world we are living in at this moment. And the trend is that more and more we will suffer from crisis and response and instability, sorry. And so we need to get equipped to try to find ways to support peace building, stabilization, and bring back to the path of development a number of places. So where we stand with the European Union here, I want to make a framework which is I want to give you a bit of the big objectives of the European Commission now. As you know, the new Commission has started in 2019, no? And it has 6 big priorities. You can read it on the screen. So European Green Deal, Europe fit for digital age, fine, an economy that works for people, but also, and here is our focus today, a stronger Europe in the world. Then, of course, promoting European way of life and a new push for European democracy. So the overarching objective for the European Union in the external action foreign policy is to have a stronger Europe in the world. We want to play a much more assertive role. We have understood that we cannot continue to be considered like a donor, but we need to be a global player. And this means that we need to build ourselves in a more assertive way within the international context. The big mantra today is strategic autonomy. If there is a chance to work with partners, we will work with partners. But if there is no chance, we will go alone. This is a big shift from the European Union in the last years. There is a lot to build, by the way. Within the international partnership, we still have additional priority areas. Some of them are the same of the big objectives that I've shown to you. I would like you to focus on the support to migration, okay, but especially on the support to governance, peace, security, and human development. So our stance in the world will be value-based. We want to bring to the world the same values that are the founding values of the European Union. Support to rule of law, democracy, peace, security, human security, not only for the citizen of the European Union, but also for the citizen of the world. The frame is, of course, made by the Treaty of the European Union. When we talk about external action, we talk about foreign policy. And here, as I said, the Treaty of the European Union stipulates that we want to safeguard our values, our fundamental interests, security, independence, and integrity. And complementary to that, we want to promote democracy in the world through the rule of law, human rights, and the principle of international law. And of course, the European Union is a peace project. We has been founded to promote peace. Of course, it started with the economic reason, but then has been a peace project. And as you probably recall, it has received the Nobel Prize for Peace, I think in 2012. So these are the main aims in external action that we want to promote. And this is the big overarching frame in which we are working to support crisis in the world. But what the external action implies, which are the domains of the European Union? And you see that a number of them. I want to start from the fifth, just going up, because we will not talk about the fifth, the fourth, and the third, and the second. So we have trade, we promote the trade agreements, and so on and so forth. We provide assistance in terms of technical assistance to partner countries through peer-to-peer experiences. We provide humanitarian aid, which is aid that is not political at all, it's just impartial aid to people who are suffering. We provide development cooperation. Now, the development cooperation is losing a bit traction. Now we promote international partnership. The DG, the Director General for Development, is being renamed as an international partnership. So you see also the shift, not only development, but international partnership, a bit more aggressive, I would say, or assertive stance of the European Union in the world. And then, of course, we have the so-called common foreign and security policy. And here, I'm sorry I'm sorry for the names. Within the common foreign and security policy, we have the common security and defense policy. We will see later, this common security and defense policy is a policy that is not inward looking. So it's not looking at the security and the defense of the European people, but is looking for the security and the provision of defense to the third countries, partners of the European Union. And here we are. So, common foreign and security policy is the organized, agreed foreign policy of the European Union for mainly security and defense, diplomacy, and other action. How we do so? We use a number of instruments, and the main aim is to promote international peace and security. We will see, we will have a number of action and a range of areas which we touch upon, such as the use of EU special representatives, so pure diplomacy. The European special representative are particular people deployed representing the EU in fragile settings, or working on particular domains that are very important for the European Union. For example, we have a EU Special Representative for the Horn of Africa, but also we have a EU Special Representative for the human rights. And then among all this realm of instruments, we have the deployment, and we will have a look into that a bit later, on CSDP mission. So Common Security and Defense Policy, civilian and military mission. We send police people, or we send the military in a particular setting in order to train and to promote security, human rights, and peace in third countries. We will go a bit more in depth later. Now, a bit more explanation on the Common Security and Defense Policy and on the mission. This is really the provision of defense and crisis management. It has a different budget. We will go into the budget later on. And here you think about the European member state providing money for their policemen or policewomen, men or women, or their army to go under the flag of the European Union to a particular country. Of course, this is made by an agreement of with the partners countries. We are invited to do so. We are not pushing to be there, and it's the first time. I mean, it's a first opportunity to have, a concerted coordinator provision of defense and security outside the European Union in third country, which is slowly happening. With inward looking, the member states are discussing how to promote security of the European people by supporting a new European army. Okay, I want now to speak about the institution of the European Union. I think it's important for you to know how we are structured. And here, of course, I'm mentioning the institutions which are the most prominent one in the foreign policy. Of course, we have first the European Council. The European Council is made by head of state or head of government. It normally meets a couple of times per year, but if there are urgency, it meets more often. And it's the institution basically which provides the basic principle of foreign policy, the guidelines, okay, for member states and EU institutions. Of course, these guidelines are then taken over by the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, which is also Vice President of the European Commission, Mr. Borrell, a Spanish former Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is responsible for the implementation of the guidelines that the head of state have somehow outlined during their meetings in the European Council. And then in parallel, we have the Council of the European Union. This institution is made by the member states, with representative of the member states, a number of ambassadors with. And here is where the policies of foreign policies in different sectors, security, but also, in other sectors, are discussed and outlined. Okay, so we have a number. For example, we have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the 27 member states meeting, taking note of the guidelines provided by the European Council, discussing with the High Representative how to move ahead on particular situation. Let's assume the crisis of Myanmar, and so on and so forth. The member states are on the lead on that, and we have to understand that. It's not the European institution leading, but they are still very much driven, everything is driven by the EU member states. Of course, then we have to implement what the member states are asking us. And here there are the institutions of the European Union who are working together in a coordinated manner, so to provide, action that will implement all the guidelines received, I would say, above. And here we have the European External Action Service, which is called, basically is is the diplomacy of the European Union. It's like the diplomatic arm of the EU, and it implements the foreign policy through a network of delegations. The delegation, think about the delegation about, you know, like embassies of the European Union. They are deployed in 141 countries, and are basically the arm of the European Union in the third countries. We will have ambassador of the European Union, a number of officials and other technical experts working then to implement at field level what has been asked and decided in the processes that I've just outlined. Then, parallel to that, we have the EU special representatives. They promote the EU policies. They go to trouble regions. They are you know, just I would say the fixers, and they are working in parallel with their team. They are not part of the network of the delegation, but they coordinate, of course, very much with the member states and the delegation when they are traveling around the world, promoting EU values or sharing, you know, EU positions. For example, I can make a recent example. You probably know about the tensions in Ethiopia, and we have deployed there the EU special representative for the Horn of Africa, who has traveled all the countries in the region, tried to promote, you know, peaceful engagement of the countries in the region, so to solve the crisis in Ethiopia, and so on and so on. And then we have us, because I'm part of the European Commission. We are the ones who are executing the budget, and we are managing the funding programs. So, for example, let's assume I'm talking about Sudan now. There is an influx of refugees coming from Ethiopia. They are flying from Ethiopia because there is a lot of violence there in the Tigray region, and they are entering in Sudan. What happens? The High Representative meets with the member states and say, guys, I'm sorry about my colloquial terminology. Guys, what we do here? What do you think? There's a big discussion on the approach that we wanted to have towards the region, towards Ethiopia, and towards Sudan. Then we receive some guidelines. You should do this and that, like you should provide humanitarian assistance, or you should promote peaceful coexistence between the Ethiopian refugees and the people in Sudan who are hosting them now. Okay, so what we do? We start working with all the services, getting the budget of the European Union, see how much we could spend for this, and then we prepare the budget, we prepare an outline of the projects, and then we move ahead with international implementing partners to implement the projects that we have in mind. Of course, this is not a work in silo. Of course, this requires strong coordination among all the institutions, but also among us, the countries, and the local authorities. Because we don't do normally, because sometimes there are exceptions, normally anything that is not accepted by the partner countries. Within the European Commission, we have a number of directorates working on this, and there are hundreds of people. We have the directorate which was called the development. The development directorate now is being called since this year INTPA, International Partnership. And you see the change. The development directorate before was very much supporting development. Now we want to support international partnership, and we want to promote values and interests. We want to be more proactive in the international arena. Then we have NEAR. It's working with the neighborhood and enlargement policies. As you know, there are states that wanted to enter into the European Union, and there is a neighborhood policy for all the states that are around the Mediterranean, which is a particular interest of course, of the European Union for the reasons that you might understand well: migration and the vicinity and the proximity with the European Union. Then we have the DG ECHO, which is the one dealing with the humanitarian aid and civilian protection. They are the one who are providing humanitarian aid. They do not coordinate very much with us because, I mean, we are informed, of course, because they are providing not tied aid. It's impartial support to countries in which we have people suffering. Then we have DG Trade, the Director General for Trade, who promotes trade and job and growth in partner countries. Normally we sign international agreements and so on and so forth. Then there is my service, FPI, Foreign Policy Instrument. It's not FBI. FPI, we are managing a number of instruments that supports the external action. And for example, we are managing money to support electoral observers that we send to observe the process of fair election in third countries that are asking this kind of support. But also we are also managing funds to support sanction, because we are providing sanction to people, state or organization if they badly behave and if they are going against the European values, and so on and so forth. I want just to inform you, we had a number of instruments, probably 6 or 8 financial instruments. What are these financial instruments? Think about pots of money, millions of euros, okay, managed by different parts of these DGs, Director Generals. And we needed to coordinate them well, make them be sequenced, make them well coordinated and working together. Since this year, and for the next 7 years, we will have only one instrument. Because the European Commission has realized that having too many instruments would require too much effort of coordination, and we lose impact when we do things in third countries. I'll go into that immediately. Now, I want to give a glimpse on the budget of the European Union. Unfortunately, this is a slide that has been prepared while the negotiation on the budget were not finished. The amounts are slightly different, but I want to give you, this is the entire budget for the European Union for 7 years. I don't know if you see the big number in the center. This is 1,279 billions euro, billions, okay? And you see the different sectors in which the budget is divided. Of course, it's a budget for internal policy as an external policy. And I want to draw your attention on the sector number 6, neighborhood and the world, and which is 123 billion euro, okay? So it's 123 billion euro for 7 years, which is basically more or less 10% of the entire budget of the European Union dedicated for the external action, so dedicated for foreign policy, okay? Now with the new amounts that have been negotiated, is slightly less than 10%, but is almost 9.9%. It's rather relevant, and is one of the sectors which have received more funds than the financial framework, the previous financial framework that was between 2014 and 2020. Therefore, what we take from here is that we want to be more prominently present in the foreign policy. Now, what remains of these billions? We have one instrument, which is the Neighborhood Development International Cooperation Instrument. Here is a big pot of money. We don't have any more 7 pots, but we have a big pot of money in which we are working together. And I will explain why. Then, of course, we have money only for the countries who wants to enter into the European Union. This is a separate one. We have a budget for humanitarian aid. We have the budget for common foreign and security policy, and these are the missions. It's a separate budget. And then we have 2 budgets which are very minor. One is for Greenland, and one is for nuclear safety. But this is the heading, so just for you to understand. And here I want to show you, these are where all the instruments that we had before. And you see in red that most of the instruments that we had before are now the NDICI, the Neighborhood Development International Cooperation Instrument. So we have grouped all the instruments that we have, and now we work only with one source of funding. Now, I finished this first section. Wonder whether you need clarification. So we went through the big frame, instability in the world, a more assertive Europe, which we are expecting in the coming years, a Europe that wants to provide support, but also wants to promote the values. Then we went through the institution, the main objectives, of course, which is the promotion of partnership and the values and the promotion of peace and stability. We went through the institution, which are part of this big bureaucracy machinery that have to implement the guidelines and the big objectives that the member states normally all together decide. And then we have been through the few information regarding the DGs, the Director Generals, which are working together to implement the budget, implement the action we are requesting. I'm not sure whether you have some question before I go ahead. Seems not. I take some water. Okay. Now, let's go back to a crisis. And we are now digging a bit deeper into our approach to crisis. So we have seen that we have a number of institutions working together, implementing a big budget. And you see that we have developments in the policy. We have changed. And in the past 2 decades, we more and more have changed the approach towards conflict prevention, crisis management, and post-conflict peace building. And we have tried to merge as much as possible civilian components and military components. We will discuss later about this big dilemma on providing security or working more on peace building. We will see later on. And basically, the first start of discussion happened in 2003, where a new European security strategy was defined. And the first basic principle that has been developed is the nexus between security and development. So formally, the European Union said, we cannot have development if there is no security, and we cannot have security if there is no development. You think, wow, it's so difficult to say. Well, it is in a way, because you have to put in writing, you have to make it as a global principle, and then you have to attach to this global principle money, and then you have to think about how to do this kind of nexus between security and development. Easy to say, but very difficult then to implement. Okay, and in 2003, we were very much focusing on the issue of terrorism, on state failure, and on proliferation of mass destruction, of weapons of mass destruction. And then we had a change, a bit more refinement of the policy. We had the Lisbon Treaty in 2007, and it was ratified in 2009. And here we had the very first time in which the EU was an international actor. And the first time that we had a recognized foreign policy of the European Union, and which constitutional basis. Before we didn't have that. And then we started, being a political actor in the international arena. The European Union started, to have the capacity to sign treaties and so on and so forth. And we started to develop a bit more the response to crisis. And in 2013, there was a joint communication. Joint communication are normally documents, formal documents, policy and guidance documents prepared by Council, so the member states, and the European Commission. So a joint work. And here, the first time we defined the comprehensive approach to external conflict. Not much more than the policy we had in 2003, but I mean, what came out very strongly was the need to coordinate not only institution, but also financial needs. And again, you would say, Edoardo, what I mean, just it's so easy. It's not easy, because you have to think about a world in which member state is leading, and you need to think about the difficulties to have all the member states, at the time 28, to agree together on something. Therefore, please appreciate the efforts that over the year have been made to try really to consolidate and shape something common. Still, we are very far from the perfect solution, but we are reaching and we are going there, probably more fastly than before. Okay, and then we arrived in 2016. Before, we didn't have a global strategy of the European Union. There was no a formal document that would lead and would provide objectives with clarity of the European Union foreign policy. In 2016, this document was issued, and it's very interesting. It was presented the day after Brexit was decided. And it was basically a means to say, guys, we more and more will work together, the remaining EU member states, to support external action. And we are sending a sign, in this case to UK, that, just we are united. And we are united in a domain that traditionally has been an arena of turf wars between member states, an arena in which member states really were very difficult in finding common stances and common understanding. So the global strategy introduced the integrated approach. I have now a short video, so I can breathe a bit. It's an old video made during the year 2011 and 12, but is telling on what the global strategy wanted to bring in with the integrated approach, and then we will go ahead. Let's see if I can, if it works. As you understand, I'm a nerd. Sorry, I'm terrible with the technology. Let's see. Maybe. I promised that it worked this morning at 6:30. I don't know why now it's not working. Maybe someone can tell me. Let's see.